Origin Gents, welcome to CG Reaction, and this is World War II Oversimplified Part 1 by the channel Oversimplified. So yeah, this is World War II video by Oversimplified. Obviously it's going to be awesome. This is one of his most famous video. So World War II was just so horrible that it ended all the major conflicts. Basically the last major war that ever fought is World War II. Before that, Europe always has been in some kind of war every few decades for for centuries. So yeah, I saw the video, the fallen of World War II. It shows that how many people died in World War II compared to World War I and any other wars, and it's just ridiculous to see the scale. And what makes it more terrifying is that World War II was fought by certain ideological, basically moron. Hitler was a moron. He thought he's going to take over the world. Really, whenever somebody comes and thinks they can take over the world, are just crazy. A single entity cannot take over the world, because sooner or later every world will band together to crush you. That always happens, and regardless of how powerful you are, you cannot fight an entire world in all sides. So yeah, but it was fought by a person who thought his race is more, better compared to everybody else. He wanted to cross everybody. He wanted entire world to be Aryan race, which is just screwed up. He screwed up, my country by taking the, holy symbol of swastika and made it something into weird. Nobody sees swastika today and thinks, Hindu holy symbol. No, they just thinks Hitler. They just thinks Nazis. So there's that. World War I was fought at the time where, obviously lots of technologies were introduced, tanks, grenades, gas attacks, chemical warfare. So in a way, as a surprise tactics, World War I was really terrifying. But World War II saw the peak of the technologies. The level of equipment that were used at that time is just ridiculous. The level of, the low-level Nazis were, ready to go to was even more screwed up. There was a tactics, I don't know the name of it, where, Hitler basically, what he did was, during the war, he just sends out innocent civilians, prisoners, before the war starts or something like that, in the, battle line. So basically, whenever two sides are fighting, obviously Allied side is going to be hesitant to fire, since, either that could be a Nazi or it could be a civilian that they release. And Hitler knew this. Hitler didn't care about the loss of life. He just cared about the results. So he just basically did this. Is it called Blitzkrieg or something like that? I don't know the exact name. Maybe, Oversimplified will cover here. So that was just screwed up. Obviously, Hitler was a mastermind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten this far. And it's also ridiculous to think that after Treaty of Versailles, after Germany was snubbed so bad, such a low level, that they rose up back and became powerful enough that they tried to take over the most of the Europe, and they kind of succeeded, because Hitler did took a lot of part of the Europe. So it just shows how dangerous Germany can be. I mean, they were dangerous in World War II. Basically, at the start of the World War I, they are just, kicking everybody in the face, I guess, kicking Russia, kicking France. France wasn't even in the war, and they're like, you know what, let's invade France, because they're going to join in anyway. I saw the Epic History TV series of World War I, and it was just awesome. So yeah, let's watch it. World War II, the most horrible thing that ever happened. And yeah.
This video was made possible by Skillshare. Churchill was a man with many talents. He was an artist, a butterfly enthusiast, and he had an unpublished manuscript about aliens. Clearly, he was a man with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Maybe he could have loaded up his computer and logged onto Skillshare, an online learning community with more than 19,000 classes in design, business, technology. First 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents.
Yeah, people, go to skl.sh/oversimplified and support the channel. Oversimplified makes really basically best videos of all animated channels, I think. He always trends top 3 whenever he releases a video. That's how good he is. So, support the channel. He's doing really good job.
Be sure to try it out using the link in the description and learn something new today. Now, without further ado. It's 1902. A young man by the name of Benito Mussolini moves from Italy to Switzerland to avoid military service. He gets big into socialism, working for trade unions, writing for socialist newspapers, advocating a violent overthrow of European monarchies, the whole shebang. This gets him in a bit of trouble with the Swiss police, so he gets arrested, sent back to Italy, set free, returns to Switzerland, is arrested again, goes back to Italy again, completes his military service after previously avoiding it, and then after a brief stint as an elementary school teacher, he finally returns to work as an avid socialist.
Man, I remember the images of Mussolini after he became a dictator, obviously. Him and his, I guess doing the Trump impression even before the Trump was, born. But, it's just ridiculous to think that, Mussolini as an elementary teacher. Imagine that picture. There Mussolini in front of all the small kids and teaching, elementary stuff.
His speeches and journalistic abilities made him famous among Italian socialists. He was anti-war, so when Italy colonized Libya in 1910, he rioted and got arrested. Then World War I came along, and once again he protested Italy's involvement. But then he thought, wait a minute, this war could bring about the social climate needed to overthrow European monarchies and bring about the socialist revolution everywhere. And suddenly he was pro-war. But his fellow socialists didn't like his new pro-war stance, so they kicked him out of the party. So then he said, you know what? I'm done with socialism. We need something new, not based on class divisions tearing us apart, but based on unity through nationality. We'll conquer the Mediterranean and reunite all Italian peoples just like the days of the Roman Empire. I'll call it fascismo, and it will guide the Italian nation to greatness. That's all well and good, Mr. Mussolini, but what kind of haircut am I giving you?
Yeah, say that speech in the United States, in the capital of Washington, everybody in Congress will have a heart attack.
Let's go with bold. Italy had been on the winner's side in World War I, and they hoped they were going to get a lot out of it, but in the end, they only got a little, and they felt cheated. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that the Italian people were a little unhappy. So when Mussolini came along and said that he could fix everything, his fascist movement gained a lot of support. In 1922, he went to the king and said, make me prime minister, or I'll make me prime minister. And the king said, you and what army? This army. Fair enough. Then he went about establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had its first fascist dictator. Next up, Germany. Germany had been on the loser's side, and they got absolutely wrecked by the Treaty of Versailles. They lost territory, had to demilitarize the Rhineland, had to reduce their army to just 100,000 men, couldn't have an Air Force, had to pay the Allies a huge amount of money that it didn't have, and a new rule was established that every Englishman withheld the right to walk into the center of Berlin, pick out any German they wanted, and spank the hell out of them. I made that last one up, but it helps you understand how all of this felt to Germans. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that when a small angry man with a silly mustache came along and said that he could fix everything, the German people loved it. Hitler had been a soldier during World War I, and he was crazy patriotic, and nobody was madder than him about Germany's humiliation. He helped start a new political party, and in
I saw the video of that Christmas truce video, and in that Hitler was there. I'm like, I didn't know that. So during the Christmas truce in the French trenches, Hitler was there, and he was like, this is ridiculous. You cannot meet the enemy and shake hands during the Christmas. So he was really uptight about that. So it was clear like how strong his views were since then.
1923, attended a march on Munich with his boys. And then he got arrested. But his popularity grew and grew, and in 1933, the president made him chancellor. He believed he was Germany's great destined savior, and he went full megalomaniac, establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had fascist dictator number 2. Hitler and Mussolini had a lot of the same ideas, but more importantly, they had the same enemies, and they started to get along. Anyone else want to?
Only 2 fascist dictators? Okay, since... Yeah, Stalin was a communist, wasn't a fascist socialist, okay. Otherwise, there are 3 technically. But since he's a communist, he doesn't. Yeah, okay.
Be friends? Franco? No? You good? I do. Who's that? It's Japan, and they've taken over northern China. Let's rewind a bit. Japan had isolated itself from the rest of the world for over 200 years until the Americans showed up and said, you're going to trade with us and you're going to like it. Then the Western powers imposed a bunch of unequal treaties, meaning Japan's economy was bust. They also had no natural resources, so they decided to go get some. They went to war with China to gain a sphere of influence over Korea, and they took a bunch of China's stuff. But then the West said, hey, cut that out. And since Japan couldn't take on the West, they said, okay, I guess we'll just go home. Wait a minute, what are you doing? Taking advantage of a weakened China and setting up spheres of influence. But I was the one who weakened them. We know. And you guys didn't let me have anything. We know. That seems unfair. We don't think so. Okay, see ya. So Japan thought, screw this, and went to war with Russia, and stunned everyone by actually winning. Then they fully annexed Korea, but they
That is so fucked up, isn't it? Europe basically, stop it, Japan. You're at the wrong side of this. You shouldn't do this. And they took this, places by themselves. Japan is even more pissed now.
didn't stop there. In World War I, they took Germany's colonies and islands in Asia. And then in an incident that was maybe staged by the Japanese army, a bomb blew up a Japanese train in Manchuria, giving them an excuse to launch an invasion and take over. So here's the situation. Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan all believe they're racially superior, all feel hostility towards the Allies, and all want to militarize and take over more stuff. And so they did. Let's start with Germany. Hitler hated the Treaty of Versailles, and now he was ready to begin undoing it. In complete violation of the treaty, the first Luftwaffe squadrons were set up, conscription was introduced, and he pimped up his army. The Allies did nothing. Then Hitler sent his army back into the demilitarized Rhineland, giving orders to immediately retreat if the Allies showed up. The Allies did nothing. With his military re-strengthened,
Whoa. What? You set up Treaty of Versailles to pressure Germany so they don't rise up again. So now somebody in Germany is rising up again. You know, they are breaking the Treaty of Versailles. They are taking the places which they shouldn't take. Even the Hitler is like, when the ally comes, retreat. I just want to see what they do. Because even Hitler is not sure that he can, power them right like that. And ally is like, oh hell no, another Germany is rising up. You know what? After World War I, I'm not touching this. Let him have him. Really? If you are so scared of Germany like that, why the hell were you so strong in Treaty of Versailles? I mean, that kind of pressured them into, rising up again. And if I were, one of the European countries like that, I would think, we pressured Germany into, being this small, and now they're rising up again. This is the time to strike the hammer. Make sure they don't, gain too much power. So this is the time where Europeans like, you're breaking the Treaty of Versailles and, dominate Germany again, so they don't rise up again. And they are not doing anything. This is stupid, isn't it?
he could now move on to step 2. He wanted to rapidly increase the Aryan population, and to do so, he needed Lebensraum, or in other words, he would have to take over the world. But for now, a good portion of Europe would do, and he began...
See, that ideology alone makes him a super villain, doesn't it? Because that wasn't the case in World War I. World War I had its own, own agendas. It was basically country fighting each other for, whatever reason countries fight each other, all those, check boxes of all of that. But it wasn't some ideology like this, like every other race is beneath us. Every country in the world should be Aryan races. We should, basically set up concentration camps, kills everybody, and just, make sure that every place has the German flag. That is too strong of an ideology. That's like James Bond villain type of thing. So that wasn't the case in World War I, but in World War II, that was the case. One of the, this is one of the key points that makes World War II even more terrifying.
Up his neighbors. The Allies finally started to get worried, so they implemented a fairly useless diplomatic strategy called appeasement, and it went a little something like this. Hitler would say, I want that thing, and the Allies would say, you can't have that thing. Okay, you can have that thing, but no more. I want that thing. And repeat. In 1938, Hitler's army marched into...
This is pissing me off, alright? I don't understand the mentality of people around this. Maybe somebody in comment will, let me know, but... You basically blame Germany for World War I. That's what Treaty of Versailles did. Basically, so suppress German people for, lots of reasons. And after that, Hitler is taking places like, I'm going to take that place from another country. I'm going to take that place from another country. You basically did Treaty of Versailles to make sure they don't rise up again. They are literally taking, annexing places around it. And you're like, okay, I'm going to let you have it. Really? If that was the case, why were you so strong in Treaty of Versailles? I don't get this. I mean, this is the time where you suddenly, get out of your sleep and like, oh, what the hell? This is getting out of hand now. Germany is rising up again. Let's suppress them. This is the common sense mentality. Why were they like, okay, let's have, let them have it. Let them grow bigger. You were basically afraid, so Germany doesn't rise up again. That's why you did Treaty of Versailles. Germany is rising up again. You're not doing nothing.
Austria, and just took it, with no resistance. Boom, this is Germany now.
This is stupid.
He demanded to be given the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia with many ethnic Germans. The Allies held a meeting with Hitler in Munich and said, look, we're going to give you what... Hang on, this meeting is about my territory. Shouldn't I come to the meeting too? Anyway, we're going to give you what you want.
Skoda.
Really? Yeah.
We'll see this one.
Just like that? Yep. What's the catch? Just sign this piece of paper promising you won't invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay. Then Chamberlain returned home victorious, waving his signed piece of paper in the air, declaring crisis to be averted and the continuation of world peace, and we built a statue of Chamberlain in his honor, and every day on the 30th of September we celebrate Chamberlain Day. Hitler's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. What? He's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. Oh. You lied to me. What do you expect? I'm Hitler. Not to be outdone, Mussolini also wanted to get in on the action. He thought to himself, isn't there a not yet colonized nation somewhere which is so underdeveloped that the people would be defending themselves against our tanks with literal bows and arrows and wooden spears? Oh, there is? Fantastic. And so he took it. Italy also wanted to control...
Mussolini basically was like, one of those, rich places where, somebody buys a Lamborghini, like, I'm gonna have to buy a Lamborghini, otherwise I'm a social outcast. I mean, that's the latest trend. So it's like, Hitler's taking on places, this is the latest trend, I have to take other places too.
The entrance to the Adriatic Sea, so they occupied Albania. Then, in another incident which was maybe staged by the Japanese, gunfire was exchanged by Japanese and Chinese troops at the Marco Polo Bridge, and the Japanese launched yet another invasion against China. They swept through Beijing and Shanghai, and then advanced through the Yangtze Valley to China's then capital, Nanking. It was here that saw the worst of Japan's shocking atrocities committed against the Chinese people. Back in Europe, Germany and Italy made their relationship status official by signing the Pact of Steel. Then, Hitler turned his eyes towards Poland and the hated Polish corridor, splitting Germany in two. At this point, the Allies really had to put their foot down, and they warned him that an invasion of Poland would mean war. Hitler had planned to continue his advance eastward, but he didn't want to end up fighting a war on two fronts. So for now, he made an alliance with Stalin, saying, how about we both invade Poland and split it between the two of us, and I definitely won't not refrain from not betraying you sometime in the future. Sounds... good. This new alliance stunned the West. On the 1st of September 1939, German troops entered Poland, and Britain and France declared war on Germany. The Poles fought hard, but they were no match for the two giants crashing down on them from either side. Then came a period known as the phony war.
I mean, this is, Polish war, the Warsaw, that was just stupid. It started in the Warsaw. Everybody was just having their time, basically somewhere in the church. People were going to the church and things like that. And then suddenly they hear the sound of tanks. Basically an entire army was just coming inside the town. They saw the tanks and everything. Civilians came all like, what's happening? During this time, common sense mentality goes like, they're going to do what they're going to do. They are not going to unnecessarily hurt anybody. But their goal was to hurt everybody. How do you process that? There are, basically civilians there who doesn't even know how to fight, and there are massive armies coming with tank, and their goal is to basically one way or another kill you, because that was their goal in the end. I mean, they did take them to concentration camp, but that was just another idea of how to kill them, starving to them to death. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that they had no idea. People in the Warsaw had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, in any war, people just think that this is going to be all war objectives. They're going to do what they're going to do. We're going to just say, we claim defeat, and they're going to just, take over the place, mostly that. They didn't know that this is led by some ideological asshole who just are here to kill us because they think we are lesser race. I mean, it's just, concentration camp and, or Poland, it's just too fucked up to think. I mean, they had no idea what's about to come, those people.
War, where everyone just sort of sat around not doing much. The French had launched a small invasion into the Saarland, but they maintained mostly defensive positions, and after a while decided to just turn around and call it a day. Speaking of France, the French were still super proud of their victory in World War I, and they hadn't really moved on from it. They still used horses, they dispatched messages by motorbike instead of using radio, orders from the commander-in-chief were usually pretty vague, and the troops were rarely inspected. They built a line of defenses along their German border, but didn't bother extending it all the way to the Channel, and they wouldn't launch artillery strikes against Germany out of fear of being retaliated against. In a war, they didn't want to attack the enemy, and at first the UK wasn't much better. Chamberlain still naively hoped that the
To be brutally honest, I think after what happened in World War I, and this is not so long after, it's just a few decades after the World War I, and during the trenches, obviously British were there too. British lost a lot of life in the trenches, but so did the French people. And so basically they are like, man, World War I just a few years ago, just a few decades, and it was so horrible. We lost so many people. So basically the scars of that war hasn't healed up yet, and something is rising up again. They are not going to be so fast to take up arms. So the French and British both lost lots of people in those trench warfare in World War I. It's just ridiculous.
The war could be ended diplomatically. Instead of bombing raids, the RAF dropped propaganda leaflets over German cities, which one air marshal said likely did nothing but provide the continent with toilet paper for the duration of the war. They also only sent 200,000 men to France, while the French had mobilized millions. Both Britain and France wanted to avoid a repeat of the First World War.
So Germany is basically, gonna be, obviously they didn't start yet, but they're going to. They did in the World War One too, with the blimps, and now they are going to do here too. They're going to bomb London, basically bomb the British city, and British basically went to Germany and bombed them with leaflets. I mean, imagine being a German, you see a plane coming, something's coming down, you're like, okay, I had a good life. When it comes down, oh, it's just a leaflet.
War, and so they wanted to keep the war as far from home as possible. So they turned their eyes north, towards Norway. Neutral Sweden was exporting iron ore to Germany through neutral Norway, so the Allies asked them if they could please stop exporting iron ore to Germany, but this request was refused. Then the Soviet Union attacked Finland, so the Allies said, how about we land troops in Norway and move them across Sweden to go help out your good pal Finland, and along the way maybe take control of all your armaments. But Norway and Sweden still said no. So the UK mined the waters around Norway to force any transport ships into international waters, and they also attacked a German tanker they found in the area. Hitler realized what the Allies were up to, and he quickly moved to secure his supply of iron ore. He launched an invasion through Denmark into Norway. The Allies rushed to land troops at key ports along the coast, but Germany had taken control of Norway's airfield, and their air superiority decided the fight. The Allies had to retreat. After this slightly embarrassing failure, Chamberlain resigned and was replaced with Winston Churchill, who had a slightly different approach to dealing with the Germans. Hitler's overall strategy was similar to Germany's First World War strategy. Attack France, defeat France, knocking out the UK in the process, then turn on the Soviet Union and win the war. During the phony war, the Allies had given Hitler time to prepare his forces. Now,
it's easy, isn't it? Just take out France, knocking out the UK. It's just too easy, isn't it?
he was ready to attack. The Allies had wanted to place troops in Belgium, but Belgium had refused, and in a move that surprised pretty much no one, Hitler launched an invasion to get around France's defenses. The Allies charged into Belgium at full speed to meet the German invasion head-on, and it looked like a repeat of the First World War was coming. But this time, Hitler had a trick up his sleeve. Blitzkrieg. As the Germans advanced, they sent thousands of refugees westward, slowing down the Allies. Then, to the south, the French had left the Ardennes.
That is so screwed up, man. I mean, you're ready for, meeting the Germans head on. Like, I'm gonna, kill the enemies. You see the refugees coming at you. I mean, you just take up, guns, like shoot them. But no, wait a minute, they're refugees. I mean, now you have to look for German. I mean, usually in the war, obviously you look for your enemies, but it's not so simple as people think. During the war times, people don't expect to see civilians in just, normal, war zones. So basically, if you see somebody in the other side, is basically an enemy. That's what your mentality goes. And you see refugees coming at you, now you're going to be hesitant to shoot whenever you see an enemy. And it's going to make very difficult to shoot people. But, Hitler didn't care. That's just effed up, man.
Den, an area full of hills and forests, pretty under-defended because they thought it was naturally impenetrable. Well, the Germans were about to penetrate it with everything they had. They smashed 50 Wehrmacht divisions through and encircled the Allied armies at lightning speed. The best of the Allied forces were now trapped. The Germans squeezed in from all sides, taking out France's best armies and nearly wiping out the British too. But they managed to make a desperate last-minute escape at Dunkirk, with British civilian ships even making the perilous journey to bring...
Yeah, I saw the movie Dunkirk, and that's just ridiculous to see. I mean, British people, they just, basically lots of civilians, just like they did in World War One. In mass in World War One, people just basically volunteered to go to war. Obviously, conscription was also there, but lots of people volunteered to go to the trenches. They just got mowed down. That was so horrible. But in here too, our troops are stuck. So civilians basically took on boats to, bring them home. That's just ridiculous to see, man. I mean, in the movie, I saw the tons and tons of boats were coming, civilian boats. They just took the British soldiers back. It's just awesome to see, man. And in the Dunkirk, during this battle, I guess lots of French veterans died too. I mean, that played key role why, France gave up, I guess. Because lots of veteran soldiers died that day.
Their young men home. With most of the French forces depleted, the Germans breezed through, taking Paris, and France fell. What the Germans couldn't do in World War I, Hitler had done just like that. Hitler hoped that with the full...
I mean, it wasn't just that. Like I said, lots of veteran and, old and veteran and experienced soldiers were there. The soldiers that were in World War I were also there. So lots of experienced soldiers fell down. And after that, France didn't much have left of veterans and experienced soldiers. So they basically just gave up, fighting now is not going to matter much. If we fight, they're still going to take us, but lots of damage and lots of life is going to lose. So they gave up. I mean, basically, one maneuver by Hitler of going around them and flanking them resulted in France, basically going down. That's just incredible.
Of France, the UK would also lose hope and sue for peace. But quite annoyingly, it didn't, and he needed to secure the Western Front, so he tried to force them into submission with mind games. The UK were now all alone, and Hitler wanted to emphasize that. First of all, just before France fell, Italy finally declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just
Look at that.
finally
Look at that. He's British England, alright? All the countries are against them. Oh my god, that's just horrible to see. Every country around you is your enemy. Obviously, British, anybody knows the history of Britain would know they don't easily give up like that. I mean, in World War One, lots of people, lots of places were bombed, and their morale was still high. Like, we're gonna still punch Germans in the face. They're still, World War II, Dunkirk, lots of civilians came there with the boat, knowing that there are German planes and everything is flying around, they could hit us. They didn't care, they just wanted the soldiers back home. Lots of civilians went there to take them home. So British morale and, patriotism doesn't go down like that. So basically, Hitler thought when France fell, Britain just gonna wave the flag. They're not gonna do that. First of all, before this time, the British was a, major powerhouse in the entire world. I mean, they know, first of all, if they gave up, people who comes after them, whether it's German or anybody, is going to be harsh on them since they know their history. So British just naturally is not going to give up that easily.
declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just occupying all of France, Hitler occupied the coastal areas for defense, but allowed France to continue its existence as a German puppet state. This way, it looked like the UK's old ally had decided to switch sides. Hitler also hoped that the UK wouldn't attack any of her old allies' navy bases or colonies in Africa, giving Hitler an extra line of defense to the south. But the UK made sure to respond to this by sailing down to France's navy base in Algeria and wrecking a bunch of ships. So have at it. Hitler then began sailing down to in Africa, giving Hitler an extra line of defense to the south. But the UK made
Why is Switzerland untouched? Why Hitler and nobody took Switzerland?
sure to respond. Hitler then began laying down plans for an invasion of Great Britain. Before German troops could land on British soil, he would first need air and naval superiority across the Channel. Waves of German bombers came, while the completely outnumbered RAF worked bravely around the clock in an attempt to quell the German attacks. At first, the Luftwaffe targeted British ports and coastal facilities. Then it attacked RAF bases, crippling the RAF's ability to defend the nation. And it looked like Hitler's Great British invasion was coming. But then, Churchill ordered a small, pretty insignificant bombing raid over Berlin. It didn't do much damage, but Hitler was furious, and he immediately ordered the Luftwaffe to refocus its attacks on civilian targets in London.
God.
Children were sent off to the countryside, away from their parents to avoid danger, and frequent trips to air raid shelters became a daily occurrence. But British morale held firm. Smiling, knitting, lounging casually, these people have balls of
Yeah, that's true. Like, is British going to bomb really like they did in World War One? That's everyday shit. We don't care. Let's just go to the shelter. Let's hang out there. Bombs flying on top. We're like, there is something. And they just started knitting. Somebody smoking. And like, we're gonna wait this out. That's just ridiculous, man. But obviously, Hitler gained this much equipment and power because during the when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, Germany was under everybody's eyes, like what they are doing. So the way he did it was basically duping their own people. That's how the Volkswagen came into the play. Basically, Hitler said, I want to make a car of the people for all my German peoples. Volkswagen, what a car of the people, that's what it means. And he said, I'm going to give you Beetle. My car should look like a Beetle, so I'm going to give you a car named Beetle. So basically what he did was went to the every citizens and even the kids, gave them some kind of a, card in which they gave certain money to the government. So after some times, government gives them a car. That's kind of how it works. So everybody from their salary gave a bit of amount to the government, to the Hitler. And they thought they're going to get a car. But obviously Hitler was not making car. He was making tanks, planes. It's just ridiculous. So he basically told his German people that, we are taking money from you to give you a people's car because I want everybody to ride a car. And basically he was creating military equipment. Nobody knew that. He also, basically perfected, I guess, Autobahn. There was some Autobahn existed before him, but there was some flaws. So he just perfected that and made them so that, he can transport his tanks and everything, military vehicles from one side of the country to the other side, basically without hiccups. And that's why Americans saw that, and he like, you know what, I want that too. And that's how interstate system came in the USA. So basically Hitler was planning for all this, duped his own people. Nobody knew he was going to, and he had this lots of planes, tanks and things like that. And now during the war, that came into the play. Obviously, against Britain, against RAF, Hitler had more planes in the sky than Britain. I mean, that can't just happen if people are just looking at the Germany like, what are they doing? But they didn't know. The Hitler just like, I'm making car for my people. He was making planes.
Deal. This refocusing on London also gave the RAF breathing space to reorganize, so Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there. Just the foot for now. Finally, the Luftwaffe sent one massive all-out attack on London, and the RAF successfully repelled it, destroying many of the German aircraft and placing air superiority firmly in British hands.
Damn.
Hitler's invasion had to be postponed, but the bombing of British cities continued for some time.
Yeah, bombing in London is just ridiculous. There are lots of people even alive today. Today, I think it was 10 years ago, I saw a video where people are alive like, I remember bombing when it happened in London. I mean, people are just walking around and just places blew up around them. Just suddenly a bomb blast happened. You see a cafeteria going just up like that. There were people inside, and people like, oh yeah, same thing happened just a few days ago. It become a natural occurring thing. That's just so ridiculous when you think about it today. This is just so horrible. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down if you want to react to some other video. Check out my other reaction that day. There's a link in the description. Check out the card, check out the end card. I created a playlist for OverSimplified. I created a playlist for Salmonella videos. Obviously Dove Hat is Roman series. I created a playlist for that too. That's why I saw Italy right now, and I saw all the red. Suddenly the word came into my mind, damn barbarians. I remember Roman times. But yeah, alright, I'll see you next time.